All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item 13. Action determined in closed session was to reinstate student 18-19-20 without conditions to Abe Lincoln or Bergen High School. A recording of this meeting is being made and shall be kept for 30 days as public record. Pledge of Allegiance read by Dr. Bobby. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dr. Bill Robinson, Jim Bender, and Mario Gutierrez. I hear a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Gutierrez, second by
Kingsley.
all in favor.
In favor, but there is a correction. On the personnel, one of the personnel was listed twice.
On the agenda.
Yeah.
Which one, Mr. Gutierrez?
That was Shauna.
That's part of certificate.
Two.
Certificate.
She's at RU's science teacher at Calcutta. So she's on the very last page of page 4, and then she's also the first person at the top of page 5.
Yeah, so we just removed one. This is the typo.
You go and see next to that. Wrong paper? Comments from the public? So we have two comments from the public.
All right, well, we got two comments. The first one is from Laura Kaminsky. It's a public comment for the board meeting tonight, and it is in quotes. If teachers cannot work from home, and there will be no supervision for school-age children, and we are 1 week out from school starting, so we won't be able to find appropriate, safe daycare anymore. What do we do with our kids? They also can't be in the classroom with us. And that is a second grade teacher from Roosevelt Elementary. The next is from Christy Munson. Hello, my concern to be considered is screen time for elementary students. 0800 to 1400 with a 10-minute break for recess and 30-minute lunch. It seems like the kids will be sitting in front of their screens for far too long. I think that the grab-and-go pickups lunch should be an hour, and that's time for a parent and child to pick up their lunch and bring it back home for the child to eat, as to not leave a young child at home alone. I also believe the teacher should have a choice on where to teach from, home or school. At a bare minimum, exceptions ought to be considered. Elder educators, pregnant or nursing mothers, immune-compromised individuals, etc. Thanks for reading. Signed, Christy Muncy.
We have our RTA report. No. No TSA report. CDO report.
Thank you. It's a busy and hectic time, and lots of stressful incidents, but a couple of exciting things emerged in those points. And one that I'm really proud of is at the transportation yard, where they are talking amongst themselves and coming up with ideas of how they might occupy their time when they're not necessarily transporting students around the school. And one of the things that they have suggested, among several others, is actually transporting food around the meals. And it's very preliminary in its design and what it might look like, so that we can do it. But they, sort of stepped up and had this idea on their own. And it's, right in line with the core values that we would want to see from our employees of thinking about children first. So they've breakfast, lunch, and dinner program that's been extended out, getting it out in the field. And how can we fail that way? I think it's really positive.
Superintendent.
Good evening, and services has been really busy over the last couple of weeks. And we have many families that are completing their data confirmation in our office, also during the day. Families can come over and complete that over here. So that way when they go and pick up their laptops, Chromebooks at the school sites, they have that completed. And this week, we welcomed our new teachers, so we've had some training. Monday was a welcome and orientation at their school sites. Tuesday and Wednesday, there was some elementary and TMS curriculum training. Today, there was e-erase training. Tomorrow is a Google Classroom and some technology training by one of our fifth grade teachers, Natalia Compton at West Park. And then Friday, there's going to be some more elementary curriculum training and an opportunity for the teachers to meet with our TA. Also, we've had some Read 180 and some 44 training for staff that are going to be teaching this intervention programs. Some ELD training for our ELD staff at Roseland High School, Abraham Lincoln and Ritter Earth. And then next Tuesday, the county is going to be presenting some ELD training to all staff, TK through 12. Been very good.
So for something I missed it, can you say how many teachers you have?
Oh, goodness.
Just a guess.
I think 19. I think there were 19 on the day.
Do you have an enrollment number? How many students have pre-enrolled or?
You
what's the
know
enrollment
what?
number?
I was talking to the gals in my office, and our kindergarten numbers are pretty low. We have 75 at Roseman Elementary, and I think it was 94 at West Park. So in looking at the numbers, we've had a lot of people that have withdrawn. That's crazy. A lot that have withdrawn, but we have, it seems like we put people in, so our numbers really haven't changed too much.
So are we on a downward trend of new teachers coming on board? Is our retention rate improving?
Special education is always, it seems to be some high turnover for us, but we have really just a few elementary openings. We had a few at the high school, a few at Tropico. So there weren't a whole lot of, it sounds like a lot, but I would say probably half of those are special education. But they seem like a great new bunch, and so excited to see what they're going to do for us and our students.
Superintendent's report, Ms. Gaines.
I'd like to say good evening and welcome to everyone who is joining us by Zoom. And I want to just give a few shout outs to some of our district office employees. First, I'd like to say to give a huge thank you to Lisa Lopez, our supervisor in human resources. She has taken on an additional task as being our COVID coordinator, and she's really working hard to put together packets for each and every one of our employees with PPE and also up-to-date literature on how best to take care of their masks and how to what they need to do if on a daily basis to prevent any kind of exposure to COVID. So there's a lot of work there. She's also working with the different site leaders, including also Tim Pengelly, who is working really hard to prepare our schools for hopefully one day return of students. And so we're doing the distance spacing, the markings on the campuses, putting up the essential posters, making sure that entrances and exits are all very visible for the students and the staff. So I want to thank both her and Tim and his team that has, if you go to Roseman Elementary, you'll see the different markings and things that he's been working on over there. It's quite evident already. And I also wanted to thank RTA, the negotiating team for the MOU, and Mr. Quellman. We're not there yet, but we're getting very close. And I also wanted to thank Mr. Gary Jones. We met with him yesterday, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with an MOU with our classified staff in the very near future. So a lot going on in preparation for Wednesday, but we're very excited to open school on Wednesday.
For communication, Mr. Badger.
Well, I can't wait to get something going here. We're just in learning, get moving, and get the teachers going, and get the children back learning again, and see how this goes. It's tough times. It's frustrating, and just like everybody else, it's day by day. We don't know what we have to do today for tomorrow, so it's going to be a learning curve. And I want to just thank all the teachers. I know they're going to have a rough time, and we're going to really depend on them and trust them to do what they do. And just thank everybody for their hard work.
Mr. Harris.
I just want to echo what Jim just said. I just want to thank the teachers for being patient and being able to withstand all the changes that we have to do daily. Other than that, we will push on and continue to do what we need to do. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson.
Hi, glad you're tuning in to us. I want to say how frustrating it is for me as I try to, I'm always looking at different health communications, and there's conflicting information about that. Trying to see what the governor's doing, and it's very frustrating for me. And I don't have children. So teachers that have children and you're concerned about your families, I appreciate you being patient and just doing the best that you can and the best that we can. I know it's frustrating, and it's frustrating for me, and I don't have the pressures that you do. So I am looking forward to seeing some good teaching going out, even though it's distance learning. And I hope that there's some way that we can meet the needs of people with challenges. For instance, people that can't receive internet at their house, so I'm hoping that we can do something to meet the needs of everyone, and I appreciate your patience with all of this.
I'd just like to say that to the parents and to the students that we're really working really hard to get school going and started, and hopefully it'll be successful on August 12th. I know there'll be some snags and what have you, but I'm sure everybody will be happy to get back into the routine and going to school. And I just hope that all the unions and the administrators will work together for the best and the opportunity for the students, for the teachers, for the staff, and for the community, and thank you.
I want to echo a huge point that Jim brought up at our last meeting, but lot of times you don't know what's going on behind the scenes and how monumental a task may be. There's lots of moving pieces to this machine. First time we're doing it, okay, sure we did it in March, but that was quick. We want to be more well-planned and do things more deliberately this time. However, information does change daily. In the perfect world, we're in control. We understand what's going on. We develop that plan and we make some small deviations. However, with as much information changes daily, sometimes we're at the end of the whip. Okay? It comes down, governor says something, current county official says something, and it sends a wave, a ripple, okay? And it does affect. So keep plugging along. We will get there. And a plug, there's 2 days left. Sign up to run for the school board. There's 3 open seats and there's many great minds in Roseman. So get out there, register, and come help us out.
The consent items A through G, I'm going to remove item E from consent item. Do you have any questions on any of the consent items? A, B, or C, E, F, and G?
For E, for each services for crossing guard, is that pay as we go or is that pay for the year? We end up not keeping these folks till January, are we still paying for a full year of contract or is it pay for services as we go?
It's
Service
based
based?
fee for service contract.
Okay, service based.
Yes, so, there are gaps in service provision.
Okay, so it's
I
not.
think they close quarterly, if I remember.
Bills quarterly.
I think so.
Yes.
And they understand that it says we.
Any questions? Do I hear a motion?
Public works.
There, second by,
Thanks.
all in favor?
Aye.
This is an operational 45-day budget revision. Mr. Clark.
Good evening, thank you. This is a smaller budget presentation or of lesser significance, but this year is of particular significance because of statewide drastic changes between what was proposed by the governor and what the governor settled with the legislators on in June. In fact, the reality for our district is that we had a relatively small shift in overall in where we landed. And so, because we were helped by really 3 things in the first round of development, one being that you had made so many cuts prior to my getting here, moving into this year, that the budget was built with a structural surplus of a significant magnitude in order to get out of the hole that we saw ourselves in for 1 year. Made that recovery and then some, which meant moving into this year, the amount of growth in expenditures that happens every year just because of inflation and salary increases and benefit increases was not enough to completely fill that hole. So there was still some surplus there that gave us a cushion. So while we didn't have any fund balance to rely on in some districts in a healthy fiscal situation, we had a quasi ending fund balance in that structural surplus to help us out. So instead of looking at a 10% reduction, we were looking at something else. The next piece that came in and helped us was many of the dollars that were allocated out were allocated on the basis of who the children are in the are, with their demographics. They stayed in line with the overall funding strategy of LCFM. And we are one of the most winner districts in that situation. It doesn't always feel like it, but we are, and so some districts, because of their demographics, lost significantly more than we did, or weren't aided as much as we were. A lot of the dollars that came in were allocated proportionally to the demographics of the district. And so, rather than making cuts, they just didn't get as much replacement dollars from federal funds and state funds to execute and back them. It doesn't change the fact that we're going to have to watch cautiously as we move into spring. You know, the biggest warning for us is cash flow. We'll continue to work on that. and be sure that, we plan as far in advance for whatever we need to do in order to stay confident. The first time we need money, we borrow from our own funds. We've already paid those funds back, nature funds borrowing, so general funds borrowed from the developer fees, and borrowed from adult education, and borrowed from the capital facilities fund, and then paid them back already for the money that we borrowed from them. And we can do that as we go through the year. But we only have small amounts of money in those accounts, so we want to spend. The other piece of good news is we are fully repaid with the county office for our loan. And that's a huge amount of progress, a huge amount of worry that's out of the way. And so moving forward, there are other options for how we can access money for cash flow if needed. And they range from borrowing from the government, as well as the county office or the county treasurer's office, or even the state. And not the draconian measures of the state receivership, but good borrowing from the state treasurer's office for fiscally solvent because of cash, not because of a structural problem budget. Having said that, our budget reflects stability on the expenditure side. There was no need to make any reductions as a result of what happened in June. There was no need for really making any reductions at all from the original budget adoption in June. We were lucky in that sense. We made allocation shifts more than we made anything focused on reduction. So it was a good place to keep the district. Having said that, this budget reflects all of the money that we were told by the county office do not assume it's yours until it's 100% signed off on by everyone that needs to sign off on it. So when the governor signed the budget, the learning loss funds, the CARES Act funds, the restoration of funds like the ACES program, which was one of the places where we were cut, CTE restoration, all of those things fell in place and are reflected in here. We were lucky with the structures of some of our grant funds that they're not entirely focused on supporting staff. They're heavily focused on supporting program growth and program development, particularly at CTE. So rather than having to cut programs, we were looking at pressing pause on some programs. So now we're having some restoration opportunities there as well. So what the state requires us to do, if there's a significant change between what the governor proposes in May and what the legislature approves and the governor signs in June, is that we create a new budget adoption opportunity or public document disclosure reflecting those changes. So there are minimal increases in some areas of revenue. And the most significant is the last category of other local revenues, and that's where you see a lot of the grant funds. And $2.3 million especially in the $2.3 million of restricted revenues. Which is there. This is an official budget adjustment. So the board is asked to move to make to recognize the changes that are happening in the budget as a result of the state's adopted budget and approve this budget amendment. And then the next opportunity to revise the budget and evaluate where we are based on how the beginning of the year actually panned out and played out. Once we get it going, this first interim as normal. This is just a clarification, public disclosure, opportunity to reiterate that the stability that we saw is still reality.
Please, I will make a motion that we accept his amendment. Revision.
Second.
Second by Denver. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
This is a revised board policy. Title IX new regulations is things.
We think it's B.
Oh, I'm sorry. Consider approval to apply for the 2020-21 California Department of Education District Consolidated Application and Reporting System of Categorical Funding Statement that is.
So this item is actually, an item that doesn't belong on the agenda. I should have asked for it being on the agenda. I believe that we need to do the application now and public revelation, and then actually is other entity here. So I will bring that up at that point. This is an opportunity to recognize the fact that we do receive significant amounts of federal money through the title programs targeted at meeting the needs of specific children. And we are looking at, as we built the budget this year, we looked at the ways in which we spent the money historically, done some analysis on what we think might be a better reallocation approach. So we're going to look district-wide with that program in a bit. And we will be working with administrators throughout the district to support their needs, but also still continue to use this money a little bit cautiously when there's so much uncertainty in this year. And it is still the goal that overall throughout the budget, sites will be given site-based budgets that they will manage themselves. It's important that they have some latitude of their own. But that's a new concept in this district. We want to make sure that we support them through it as best as we can. What it is, what their authority is, what their limitations are, and also that they have the opportunity to think through, if they're given X number of dollars, how they might spend those dollars, and that they're not simply thinking that that means supplies. If that's not really what they need to spend the money on, they have opportunities to shift the money around as they're going through the creative. The title resources will be one component of supporting that.
Does that mean they can hire personnel, like aides or things?
Potentially over time. At this point, we won't have enough money to allocate out to sites to support any pilot site. I was going to say much, many, but we really won't have money at site level to support STEM training. Over time, there's always potential for that, but we're not there yet.
So what are you asking for approval?
I do not need approval. I apologize.
It's an action.
Turn it into information, and
It's proving for him to apply for this. So,
Do you need to take an action item on this?
actually, I'm sorry,
Yeah, we have to take an action
it
item.
does say there's an action here.
that's approved act. Okay.
So asking for approval to continue on
To apply.
The-
So it's consider approval to apply for the 2021 California Department of Educational District Consolidated Application and Reporting System for the factorial funding of state and federal programs. So your motion.
I'm going to motion that we allow him to apply for our categorical funding.
Second by
the
Jerry. All in favor?
Aye.
last man at the end of the day.
Which one? Which table? Yeah.
Item 8, general, approve revised board policy, Title IX, new regulations, things that first read.
Yes, this is the board policy that we informed you at the last board meeting, that you would only get to have one reading because unfortunately we just got the board policy. The state just released it Friday evening about after 5. And so this is the one reading, just in a nutshell to give you a little bit of background on this. It's just has to primarily deal with the federal government's definition of what qualifies as sexual harassment and the policies and procedures process for filing a complaint on that. So that's primarily what it is and how it is investigated.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept. Second.
Second by Linda, all in favor? Aye. Approve first reading of the board policy 0470 COVID-19 mitigation plan and stance.
Yes, this is a board policy that is somewhat generic in nature, but it's pretty comprehensive if you read this board policy, pretty much outlining what districts should put in place or be doing to for a safe learning and working environment, to create that environment for the teachers and our students. Also, it talks about the social emotional, the anxiety that our children may suffer from being out or maybe being in a blended model, and how we need to deal with that. And of course, the instruction and scheduling for what's best for the instruction for the students, and also professional development that, as you heard Mrs. Hargis say, we've been doing a lot of to help prepare our teachers to provide that distance learning and do it with, with confidence, and to really make sure that kids are getting exposed to their curriculum on a daily basis. So that's what that board policy pretty much covers.
Yes. So I have a question about one section. It says the staff shall pay careful attention to students' increased mental health concerns. Okay. It's page 52. And so that just says staff. So it means the custodians need to pay attention to this, the
Well, I don't think
office staff.
Although there have been many custodians over the years who, while in the cafeteria, build relationships with children. I don't necessarily mean it's isolating the custodians from that generic word of staff, but when we talk about staff, it also means it could be site administration, the teachers, the school psychologists, the mental health therapists, school nurses, of course, the admin. There are several people, paraeducators, could all become aware. So probably the word staff is used in lieu of calling out all of those individual classifications and then maybe missing one.
Do we have any kind of like a red flag report that maybe we should look into this student because this such and such incident occurred or whatever? Do we have some sort of plan for that?
Well, I think, I don't know that we have a plan right now, Dr. Robinson, but we also need to keep in mind that when we do become aware of certain issues with a student, there are HIPAA laws that require us to, there's some confidentiality there that may come into play, and we have to be cognizant of that we don't just inform the entire staff or all the teachers until we really know. We first have to get that child help from the right people, whether it is the counselor, the psychologist, or the mental health therapist. That I think would depend entirely on what are the issues with the student, and once we become aware of them.
Yeah, it'd be nice if there was some sort of a way to know who do I bring this, to whose attention do I bring this to, you know?
Well, I think,
I think if it was a part of the staff to go follow the chain of command. For me, I would report to my supervisor and I think take over. From there.
I can say that our school psychologists and our mental health therapists, we have an additional one this year that we've hired. In the past, they stay very busy in dealing with just these sort of circumstances that come up, and usually it does start with the site administrator becomes aware, and then it's trickled down and given to the right person who can best benefit the student.
I'm just hoping that we have some sort of a plan to discreetly do this without, without violating any of the HIPAA things, but to make sure that if children have issues, especially since there may be more this year than usual, that there's some kind of protocol. Yeah, protocol.
And I will look into that. I'm sure I'm sitting here, and perhaps if our director of special ed, although it's not a special ed issue, but she may be able to say that we do have, as she oversees the school psychologist, that we do have something very, very much like what you're talking about.
Right. I know that we do have a pretty comprehensive plan on suicide prevention that's been laid out. But, I just don't want other issues to get lost.
Definitely something I will look into, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you.
Second review, reading, and approval of board policies, Ms. Davis.
Yes, these are your, this is the second time you're seeing these. And just to refresh you, option 3 on board policy 0430, we have to select option 3 because our SELPA office is at the Kern County. So that's just very clear there. And then option 2 under administrative reg 1312.3 uniform complaint procedures. The reason we chose option 2 is you as a board selected this option because you wanted to be able to have any appeals come to the board of trustees, and that was clearly option 2. The rest of these are the impact aid, the new regulation. Primarily talks about students who may be living on federal government land, including any American Indian students we have that might be on living on Indian reservation or Indian land. So that's pretty much what the impact aid is talks about. So this is your second time to see these policies.
Is there a motion?
Motion on,
Second reading,
second reading.
second by second. Atkinson, all in favor? Aye.
This for policy. That's what it- take a look at.
Annual review of board policy 9270, conflict of interest, so Mrs. Davis.
This is the board bylaws, which are required every 2 years to be approved, that really outlines the conflict of interest for board members. In this document, it talks about fair political practices, how as board members you have to complete a Form 700 annually, And so this is just for your consideration. It has to be approved this time, no later than October 1st. So what I thought we could do is we could put this on maybe a closed session to look at the document more in depth, giving you some time to prepare between now and August 19th. So if you want to change something, I know that when it outlines the personnel, that's not completely accurate any longer with the number of directors, et cetera. So we need to update that. And there may be some other additions or deletions that we need to make. So right now, if you would just basically review the document.
We will do that. Personnel items. Approve the following listed personnel items. Amy.
Yes, as you can see, it's pretty clear. Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez, for catching that duplication. We've had some employees retire, some resign, some that we've transferred, some of the paraeducators, and redistributing them to all sites, all 4 sites. So some were transferred, and pretty much some are moving over on the column.
A shout out to Esmeralda Bourne. She's 6th grade teacher at Tropical Middle School. Retired. Glad to see that. Happy to see it. Any questions?
I just, with Mr. Tankley, again, I just want to go on, record saying that, are we being careful with our hiring? We just got good with our budget, and, I don't want to overextend ourselves and hire more teachers and have to do a layoff in a few months or something. So I want to really be careful. I know we're looking for work for other people and move them around and keep them busy and keep them employed. And so I'm happy to hear that we have the opportunity to do that with the unions, if they're working with us to do that. That's very important in times like this, that we can interchange in jobs and do different jobs that help out the district. But I want to really be careful that we just don't overflow ourselves. Is it 1-to-1? Are we getting one retired and bringing on one?
Typically, that's what happens, Mr. Bender. And keep in mind that every board meeting on your agenda, you have a personnel items to approve. Designed back in June, and we're just replacing that position now. You know, it does take some time to find people that are qualified in specific content areas. And so that's why it probably looks like that, although there's only, I think, not that many hires. But yeah, there are, I guess, in the when we look on the second page as well. But some of them are just positions that people have left.
Mr. Barth, is there any way possible HR, when they develop this, or you, whoever develops this, they can maybe put an asterisk if it's a newly created position, so it stands out clearly to us, or some annotation, just an asterisk or word just there, so we know if we see that, that's a newly created stipend or a newly created position. And then it'll make it easier for us to weed through versus remembering back 6 months, hey, a science teacher left. Now we're on. I mean, it's not that many. I think the only additions you've had this year are one grounds, and
Those are restorations
There's not a
too.
lot of folks, probably 3 or 4 positions. But you know, as Mr. Bender said, that's our most expensive cost is manpower, and if we add too many, we go down the road of being millions in the hole again. So.
You know, Lisa and I talk frequently, you know, and these are reports directly to Barbara, so there's sort of the triangle there, and I think that's a good relationship where not everything is under business services. And so there were times when we slowed down some of the hiring processes this year because of what was going on in the budget, to make sure that we had a good clear understanding of where we're gonna land and try and match things. So it was a triangular sort of conversation a lot of the time about who we were posting and what we weren't posting, for those specific reasons. But in terms of marketing thing, I think I believe that conversation was just super interesting.
Okay, yeah, I think-
Just
something to
there's always a way to do something to, absolutely.
because it is a concern, because when we hear people talk, even when the unions speak, they kind of get the impression that once we're out of the hole, which we are now, that the floodgates are gonna open. Right. That's not necessarily the case, because there's still negotiations that have to be paid, stuff like that, that has to be taken into account. So, all the people out there that think that the floodgates are gonna open, now that we'll take off, and we're gonna hire back to where we were before, isn't necessarily the case. You know, this is a business, and it's gotta be looked at like a business, even though it is, you know, a governmental agency, it's still a business, and you've gotta operate like that. And, so for all those people out there that think that's the case, it is not necessarily the case. So, understand.
And we react to changes too, right? I mean, we do it right now, so things aren't always look the same as they did.
And I just want to say, piggyback on what Mr. Tanksley and Mr. Bender were saying, but I want you also to know that as of today, we're a week out from the opening of school, we are still in need of a couple of more teachers. So we are still.
Yeah, I understand that, but we took the big hit, and I'm just gonna throw out numbers, I don't know what they are, I would like to know maybe. When we downsized, we ended up with 150 teachers, or 100, let's say, just say 200 employees in that school district. Are we still at 200 because nothing's any better financially? Yes, we're out of the budget, we're doing good, but we're still treading water here. So are we still at that number when we left a year ago? To me, we should still be pretty close at that. I understand we're gonna have to hire a couple, but we should still be at that number of employees.
Well, if anything, we're considerably under that number.
Okay, under or just that?
I would say in teachers, we're under,
Okay,
and even classified staff.
okay.
Associate Superintendent Hargis was just reminding me, we have a number of unfilled positions, CSOs, ACES positions, and there's a few others too, that people left the positions that we didn't refill.
And from the
We're
public,
thinking really hard about filling them, but being careful with all this going on right now, we may not quite need it.
Well, and that's the train of thought, is we have a filter, we don't need them.
so from that, you heard the word downsizing. We're not downsizing, we're right-sizing.
Right, so
Let's not stress we're downsizing. Sure, there were cuts made, but we're trying to find the right size for this organization and for this to function. And it may be significantly less than what in the past we had under Balloon Growth. So, we'll use the word right-sizing from now on.
right, so
And I was going to explain what Mr. Bender was that a lot of the teachers that are actually all this hired us were working for us as of last year, but since they were preliminary, we have to let them go from last year's contract, and then we bring them back in this year. So we rehire them back.
As long as we are talking about that, I would be advocating at this point for those two elementary PE teachers, but considering the position we're in. I'm saving that for next year. I just wanted people to know that I haven't forgotten about it, and I will be pushing for that for, next year, because I think those are important positions.
Make a motion that we accept the personnel as written.
a second?
All in favor? Aye.
Any objection?
Did you have any other questions before we make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I might have missed the opportunity, but I like looking at the purchase orders. I look for the comma, then I look for numbers before that comma. And we've got a couple big ones here that I'm concerned about, and I thought I heard before we talked about it that they weren't that high. Our modular leasing. We've got about what, $215,000 that we're leasing these. How about the ones next door? Are we being credited for that through the school that's using them? Are we leasing them? Are we renting them? Are they paying for them?
They have a lease agreement with the district where you provide space. Every single one of the buildings, depending on when it was purchased, was square footages, kind of stuff, is price to it. And we actively manage the process of bringing buildings in or removing buildings as well. We removed a couple of buildings this year, for example, that were no longer needed, and that shortened the lifespan of that lease, saving districts some money. But it is true. These buildings like this are expensive.
And so we've got what, 10 units over there? They shouldn't be costing us anything, right?
I'm actually not aware of whether or not they do.
I mean, as many as there are in this school over here that we're leasing out.
All of those buildings are not included in that lease. Some of them are retained by the district.
We own some of them?
No, we own some of them, but
They're not leased out.
they're not really leased out. I think they need to.
Well, okay.
And they're just for clarity, but
But the ones that we do lease out is 100% paid for.
I want to say when they looked at it, they looked at the cost of the lease plus possible power.
Water and power, I thought.
I believe. It just wasn't, I think we tried to slide clean in there too, but we weren't successful. I think we
they require to bring their own custodian.
yes.
Because that's a huge number there. I was under.
Part of the specific details of that for you. There was a lease that I signed on for. It was up prior to my here, so I haven't really dug into it. But I will follow up with Friday letter with the details.
And again, as long as you look into it, I trust you. That's what you're hired for. That's what drivers hired for. I just want to make sure that we're aware that buildings should be paying for themselves, and we should be paying for them.
But we've been given sort of given time, right, with the facilities use throughout the district, and we're not getting pressured right now because of COVID for people to access the facilities. So we need to look at that in a mindful and fiscally responsible way in all aspects of how we rent out our facilities. So we'll be doing that over the course of this year.
The next item was 55,500 for attention to attendance. What is that? What is that?
That is the system that we subscribe to from the school's innovation advocacy for California. What they've put together is a beginning to end script for the district to follow plan for improving attendance of students. And it specifically addresses a number of different intervention points at an escalated level to target students who have evidence of leading to and then leading to situations.
So it's like a program that we're paying 55,000 for
Yeah, we have
a year in contract with them. That's for 3 years.
This is our second year with them.
It's 55 every year for the 3 years.
It actually goes down. Last year was 60. This year it's 55, and I'm not sure what it is next year, but I know it goes down.
Is that paid with restricted funds because that's one of our goals to improve the attendance, to improve money coming into the district? Is that paid for?
It's part of the outcome. It is definitely the outcome.
I mean, Mr. Bender, I don't know if you, I wasn't listening to everything that was said to you, but A2A creates all the letters that go home to the parents. They really do a phenomenal job of collecting data on how our kids which kids are attending, which kids have certain tardies. So it's really a worthwhile program. How effective is it going to be during the distance learning? I couldn't say because we have a contract with them. So, but under normal circumstances, we readily get data on. I know exactly which schools have met with the parents whose children have excessive number of absences, and that data, I can have that data just very, very quickly.
So they provide all the data in there for us and do all the
And
work?
they create all the letters.
Okay, it's just not a disc that they sell us?
Oh,
and
no.
we download it,
No.
print off some copies?
No.
Okay, so at one time, I was the bubber for Roseman that did that, and I probably spent with April Maya, and I forget who was before her. But by the end of the year, there were 2 3-inch binders full of those letters that I had to generate, call the parents, call them 3 times, and they were answering me. There was a process, and it ate up a big part of my day. So I think that streamlined it, because I think Holly was doing it. She said it streamlined it greatly. Because even from the target side, we got a note at 3, and we got a note at 5 and 10. So we had to push letters out at certain times, but we generated those letters versus the system generated. So it is a time saver, which is a money saver as far as salary and stuff like that. So I think it does make it money back.
And we get paid for their attendance because if they don't attend, we lose money. So you have to realize that it's also generating some, revenue by getting kids back into school that maybe might have been lost track of.
So maybe at the next, or you can give you the information on the enrollment of the students.
I think next meeting, President Sanchez will be a better time to give you those numbers because they're still coming in right now. Some people, unfortunately, will wait till the last minute to enroll.
So we'll always have that group that always goes like a week or 2 later.
Get started. Because how is that going to be? Is it just by them enrolling, or is it going to be like the first day that the teacher logs on with that student? How is that going to work? Because normally it would be when that child's, sitting in class.
Right. So really the school site, if the teacher, however this pans out, working from home, working at school, they'll probably get an email from the office to say, this is your new student. They can scan in, something with all of their information so that, we know that, you to get a hold of this parent, get them as part of your Zoom. So they'll receive all of the information.
And Mr. Bender, do you want to ask about the laptops?
No.
You don't?
You did a good job. You found some good ones. I know we're gonna need them. There's no arguing about
That's our
that.
one-time CARES fund. That's one time, that money has to be spent by December 31st.
30th.
30th, there, thank you, 30th. Yes, that's
Trying to
good.
make such a production out of it, I have to say it.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, has to be spent by December 30th. And ask him if he's received it yet.
No,
No.
but we're spending it.
We're spending it, we were told to spend it.
Yeah, we've been down that road, right?
No, this is a safe instance of that. And we schools do this all the time. We do it with our federal money as well. If we haven't spent every dollar of federal money that we have in the bank right now in a specific program, we can't draw down more until we do spend it. So you have to constantly go into a deficit situation before they reimburse the district for money spent. So we're sort of used to that. When you get in trouble is when you assume that you've got a grant before you have the actual grant agreement or confirmation award letter, and you start spending. So you have to be careful, very careful with that one.
So I have a question about the, item D that was tabled for now on Avid. Are we reevaluating how Avid's going to work this year? Is that why we have to table that?
No, that's not the reason why, although Leanne and I discussed Avid a little bit, because we are in a distance learning mode right now. We felt that our goal was initially, before this all happened, was to take X number of teachers to Summer Institute, and from elementary, middle, and high school to start our Avid program to build capacity in our kids at the elementaries before they came to Tropico and before they entered the high school Avid program. We have since decided that maybe in lieu of everything going on right now, that we would hold off at the 2 elementary sites, even though there are teachers there who you can walk in their classroom and see Avid strategies being used. We really want to build a strong Avid at Tropico, and also at, we believe we have a pretty good Avid program at the high school. And so some of those fees are not, we haven't paid those fees yet, and Leanne, you wanna jump in?
Yeah, so we'll bring it back on the 19th, and it'll be about $15,000 less in the elementary level.
So how does that work with, getting their binders updated and everything?
Well, we'll have to be a little bit creative with the binders, but they will still be able to do tutorials. They'll still have some Avid tutors. Through the Zoom, they can do little breakout sessions. So, either Avid tutors, when they Tuesday, Thursday, we do tutorials, they can still have a math section or a science section where they're working in their small groups. But, like everything else, it's consistent.
Yeah. Well, I think teachers are one of the most creative people I know. And so, and they are not ashamed to steal from each other. So we get somebody that's really good at it, we just steal their knowledge and things. So, okay, thank you.
I will move to adjourn.
Motion by Katura, second by Bender, all in favor?
Aye.
At 8:16.